Welcome to Healing Childhood Trauma, the podcast for millennial women who are ready to heal from the past. Here, we have the deeper discussions on emotional well-being and practical tips that will empower you to transform your relationships and underlying anxiety from insecure to secure attachment. I'm Lysandra, your host and psychotherapist. I'm a little bit obsessed with human development, deep conversations, and finding the lesson even in the most challenging of circumstances. I'm very happy to have you with me on this journey of self-discovery where we unpack the past and heal in the present. Hello, my lovely. Welcome to another episode of Healing Childhood Trauma. We are staying on the topic of communication because I have one of my workshops coming up all about healthy communication and secure communication if you are somebody who gets stuck with knowing what to say, who runs away from conflict, if you are a people pleaser who shuts down and appeases anytime you need to ask for what you need, this workshop is going to be for you. Because here's the thing, it is so hard to communicate when you are being triggered. It's hard to know what to say. It's hard to even know how to get your point across without coming across as either critical or judgmental. And it's really hard if you are triggered to show up in a place of being grounded and being rational. Because being triggered is about your nervous system feeling unsafe. And your nervous system doesn't care about saying the right thing. Your nervous system is focused on survival. Whether that means people pleasing, shutting down, getting defensive, or just avoiding the situation. It's your body's way of trying to keep you safe, and it's based on your past experiences, which is essentially what triggers are. We become triggered because it's something that we've experienced in the past. And so for many of us who have an insecure attachment style, communication has probably felt unsafe for you since childhood. And quite often what happens is that the right words just don't land when you're feeling dysregulated. It doesn't come out in the way that perhaps you might have intended it to. And quite often that's because we can't think our way through communication when our body is in our trauma response of fight, flight, and freeze. So regulation has to come first. And that is what my workshop is based on. It is based on secure communication. So just a quick invitation to you. You may not be listening to this in time. You might be listening to this after the workshop has already happened, but you will still get a lot from this episode anyway, because I'm going to be talking about communication and what happens when you are triggered. But the invitation is for you if you are listening before May 17th, because that's the date of the workshop. It's May 17th at 11 until 1 p.m. British summertime or GMT +1. It's for 2 hours. And you are going to be learning a framework, well, more than one framework. You're going to be learning a couple of frameworks. It was maybe 2 to 3 frameworks, which basically teaches you how to have effective communication, even when you're being triggered. So you're going to learn how to approach communication, what to actually do, and how to approach conversations when you're in the middle of conflict. And that's going to help you in your romantic relationships. It's going to help you as a parent. It's going to help with family dynamics. It's honestly one of the key points of being able to come into your relationships and into your environments from a place of being more secure and more confident and more able to speak your voice, speak your truth without being worried of the consequences of rejection and abandonment, which is often what comes up when we go into people pleasing and we fear conflict. It often comes from that place of rejection and being worried that we're not going to be accepted. I would suggest you get in there quickly. Spaces are going to be limited because I do like to keep numbers fairly small, just to keep it small and intimate. But I would love to have you join me on this workshop. If you have any questions or anything about the workshop, drop me a DM on Instagram and I will be happy to answer. But for now, let's get back to the episode. When it comes to communication, it's not just a skill, it's also part of your healing process. For those of us who are healing from relational trauma, learning to communicate clearly is about more than just the words that you say. It's also about reclaiming your body while being seen and while being heard. It's about staying present even when it feels vulnerable. And that takes more than a script of knowing what to say. It's about embodying, coming from a place of being grounded and taking your rational brain with you rather than just reacting in the moment because you've been triggered. As kids, we were taught, use your words. But if no one taught you how, no one modeled that for you, or when you did use your words, you were punished for speaking up because children should be seen and not heard, or as a child you shouldn't have an opinion, or you were dismissed or you were invalidated, or even punished for expressing your emotion, words probably now feel unsafe, which is why now conflict feels like such an overwhelming and scary thing that makes you want to avoid it, especially for people who have an insecure attachment, like anxious or avoidant, because there is that feeling again, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to be abandoned. In an anxious attachment style, that might come out as over-explaining yourself, over-talking, oversharing even. And with an avoidant attachment, that can come out as just avoiding the conversation at all, shutting down, going quiet, disappearing. Because ultimately the fear is that if I say or do the wrong thing, I'm going to be rejected and abandoned. As an avoidant attacher, you are going to be great at either avoiding or even deflecting and intellectualizing. And while it's great to be able to communicate and say and sound like you're intelligent, intellectualizing isn't necessarily emotional intelligence. Because when you are intellectualizing your emotions and how you're feeling, quite often that takes you out of connection, and it can almost position you in a place of you're almost acting as though you are superior in a lot of ways, like you know better, and it's unintentional, but you can end up talking down to the other person because you are coming from this place of intellectualizing your feelings, or using really big fancy words. Perhaps on something I see quite often actually is even just using words out of context. For example, saying like you're gaslighting me and using it in the wrong way, and saying that you're gaslighting when somebody, or you're being gaslighted because somebody disagrees with you, or they remember it differently, or they have a different perspective to you. So it's using all of these like fancy psychology jargon words that you've picked up probably from therapists like me who are sharing certain things on the internet, but you're kind of taking it out of context and you're using it in a way you're trying to communicate and you're trying to be understood, but because you don't quite understand the meaning behind the words, you're using them in the wrong way, babes. I say that with love. And so if you have more of a disorganized attachment, you might swing between a lot of all of those different kind of behaviors of shutting down, being avoidant, intellectualizing, oversharing, over-explaining. It's everything happening all at once, because again, it's your nervous system trying to find safety, because that's essentially what your nervous system is designed to do, is trying to find safety. Sometimes we just kind of go about it in the wrong way based from our previous experiences. A reason why intellectualizing isn't necessarily the best way of approaching conflict or approaching communication is that communication isn't a neutral thing, it's a relational thing. So if you were ignored or punished as a child, or you were invalidated when you were growing up, your body can associate communication with danger. So even small comments can bring up old wounds for you, and it can make it hard for you to stay present in the moment. So being triggered literally amplifies everything. And a trigger can be like a really subtle thing, or it can be a really obvious thing. In a relationship or in a relationship kind of dynamic, you can be triggered just by even a change in facial expression or a change in the tone of their voice. It could be based on something that they say or something that they don't say, but it's more than just what is being said, because communication is more than just language. It's also body language, and it's also the things that are not being verbalized. And so I want you to bear that in mind when you are being triggered and you're thinking, well, hardly anything even happened. They didn't say anything that was, specific, or they didn't do anything to me, why do I have this strong physical bodily reaction? Because we can't really control what our triggers are. But if we listen and we pay attention, we can understand a little bit more and understand more about ourselves and what triggers us if we listen to the cues of what those triggers are. And that's a really big part of communication and secure communication, which is what I teach my clients. Because what happens is when you are triggered, your window of tolerance becomes smaller. So that means your capacity to deal with stress becomes smaller. So you're dysregulated, that means it's harder for you to pick up nuance. So you might take things more personally. You might have a reduction in your ability to have empathy and understand the other person's perspective. And your logic also narrows. So instead of having critical thinking and being able to problem solve, that part of your brain almost switches off. So that's why it's so important for you to also build up your regulation skills, your emotional regulation skills, alongside your communication skills. The goal when it comes to communication is not that you are aiming for perfection. You don't need to have perfect timing. You don't need to have perfect tone or perfect words. It's not showing up as this perfect version of yourself who doesn't react to things badly or doesn't get triggered, because that's also an unrealistic expectation of ourselves. Even once we've done the work and we've been to therapy and we've done, all of the healing practices that we can, we do meditation, we do somatic work, we do body-based practices, we're doing, trauma-informed yoga, trauma-informed therapy. It doesn't mean that you'll never be triggered. It doesn't mean that you're never going to have strong emotional reactions to things. And so one of the key things alongside learning how to communicate effectively and how to approach conversations and how to know how to have conversations in a way that you can be heard without self-abandoning your needs or without going into people pleasing and prioritizing somebody else's needs and emotions above your own emotions or your own needs, is by coming from a place of self-regulation. If you are kind of new to what I'm talking about, because I have to also remember as a therapist, all of these words are like buzzwords and maybe it sounds like, intellectualizing words, but essentially when I'm talking about emotional regulation, you're basically finding ways that help you to feel calm, that help you to find safety. That is literally all that it means when we're talking about emotional regulation and regulate your nervous system. How do you start to feel safer in your body? What helps you to feel relaxed? What helps you to feel calm? What helps you to become grounded and more present in the moment? Because that helps when it comes to communication. That helps when it comes to conflict. And that helps when it comes to having hard conversations. So what you need in order to have secure communication is to be connected to yourself while you are in connection with somebody else, which is also co-regulation. So if you want to learn how to deal with conflict with perhaps maybe an avoidant partner while you are anxiously attached and feeling triggered, then I would love to have you on this workshop, which is happening on the 17th of May. Yeah, latecomers are welcome, but spaces are limited. It is an online workshop, so it doesn't matter where in the world you are calling from. You are going to come away really being able to transform your relationships and really transforming how you communicate. I will probably do some lovely worksheets for you as well, so you can take away everything that you have learned from the workshop. And if you are registered to join, I'm also going to record the workshop so you can watch the replay. So if there is anything that you don't take in the first time, you will take it in and be able to implement the second time around. I don't do these workshops very often, but it is based on my program of secure attachment. So I've been running different versions and different variations of this program, of this course, of this workshop for the last few years. And I feel like this is one of the key components to secure attachment, is learning secure communication. So I will pop the link for the information and to sign up in the show notes with all of the information. But like I said, any questions, drop me a DM on Instagram and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you for joining this episode of Healing Childhood Trauma. I hope you found today's discussion insightful and empowering. Remember, healing is a journey and you are not alone on this path. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favourite podcast platform. And you can share this episode with a friend. Your feedback helps this podcast to reach more women who are ready to heal and build secure, healthy relationships and heal from the past.